both these. So that's the only fix there. So CM, FSL, CM, FSL, CM. I need to put that in a minute. Yeah, one chatbot very carefully its own work and self-report and things it does wrong, all that shit. The slower version that like the quote-unquote sensibles advocate for, and even that was dog shit. So, and after just it was January and February, and I took a little bit of time off doing any code at all. Yeah, I hate this. And Google something or like I write Ruby. Also, my Ruby skills of, well, it's quote-unquote skills. Like I write Ruby. Also, my Ruby skills of, well, it's quote-unquote skills. I'm not an amazing developer, but my skills have atrophied somewhat. But also, Crystal's really similar to Ruby, but it's not the same language. So, like, it's not Ruby, but compiled as, like, has lots of superficial similarities, and the standard library is really similar, but in some ways it's just not. So it's like, I have Dash open. If I can't find the thing I want in Dash quickly, I'll go and be like, what have I got now? Yeah. How does sub work inside Crystal, right? Because there's certain things they've responded to from the Ruby standard library. So in a string, you just G sub, and then, because I hate writing regex, but you can G sub and pass in a really basic regex to make it do something. But sub only does the first instance. So if you try and say, like, if you get an array, there's another one as well, actually. There's like a non, you can, instead of making it enumerable, just slower, you can anyway, there's ways around it, but again, like, Ruby's up to its tits and like loads of like little utility methods all over the place. There's like 12 different ways to do the same thing in Ruby. And if you forget half of them, it means you have to remember 12 different ways to do it. Because the sort of the fun bit of Ruby, I think for Rust people, is like not using unsafe, and for Ruby people, it's making it as terse as humanly possible, without going to cold code golf. So it's that thing of like, how short can I make this thing without making it illegible? It's kind of the fun zone. I'm well out of that zone now. But I favour like more explicit, because I've got a memory like a fucking sieve. I favour more explicit, longer form shit anyway, because I'm an idiot. Anyway, but yeah, so even those situations where you're like, well, I've actually got the docs up in front of me, but even then, you have to fight that urge to be like, let it just do some more shit for you. And it's done odd little tiny bits and bobs, but it's like, I'm very much in the driver's seat, and this is the result, because this code's fucking awful, but I'm sort of writing it like, that old adage of make it work then make it good. Well, this nearly works, but let's give you a little quick tour. It's pretty simple and there's not much it covers right now, so we go into here, just clear this off. So there's Fossil, which is what I've been playing around with a lot recently, and it has a pretty good CLI. But what I want to do is not only have additional abilities inside it, but also I'm building another tool at some point, which this will also interface with in addition to what it does. So the idea is making the quote-unquote DX of Fossil CLI nicer, but also give it some new abilities, right? And what that's really, I've sort of barely scratched the surface of this and sort of been sort of plinking away at it a couple of hours at a time sort of thing for like a week or so, I don't know. On and off, not too serious. So it's called FSL instead of Fossil, because it's faster to write FSL instead of Fossil, and it does a bunch of stuff. There's no documentation inside the CLI for that, but it piggybacks off it, so it passes through all the commands eventually to Fossil anyway. It is a Fossil wrapper in the truest sense of the word. I'm not trying to pretend I'm doing some good engineering here. I'm not. This is like script kiddie level shit, but it is fun, right? So we've got our own config, so we can load something to config, which allows us to do some interesting stuff. Like for example, create. There we go. So create remotes here. So this is an interesting one. Note to self: this is shit. So yeah, basically the default username. So we're constructing basically. So the way it works in Fossil is, right, where it's SQLite, it's a single file, right? So the process of creating a remote is actually kind of really fucking annoying. And I think for this might not make ship to other humans, because I don't know preferences and I don't want to enforce a workflow. And there's like, again, to make the DX nice, you have to catch all the edge cases and communicate. And this is not doing that. This is not slick. But right now it enforces a specific format. I need to think about that a bit more. But yeah, so effectively the workflow is, for a lot of people, there's a ton of different ways to host Fossil. And create remote repo will be one of those methods that is really for the other tool, maybe more general purpose with feedback from other people. I don't know. Point is, the workflow for a lot of people is you just SCP up your SQLite file. There's like a little CGI thing. You start the service, and it will just serve all of those repos. It's incredibly simple. You add new repo to the directory, and it will just serve it straight away. And then you just hook up the remote, right? So you hook up the origin, and it goes. So that's a couple of commands, and this just sort of automates that. In fact, let's see if I can show you. It's very janky at the minute. So if I go to CD code. CD museum actually, and we'll just do this. ls. So another test fossil. So we'll just go to code, and then we'll just do let's just do some test. Some other feature. And you can do multiple checkouts like you could back with feature. And you can do multiple checkouts like you could back with why isn't your mind working? Why isn't your mind working? SVN, but it works centrally. Like you'd SCP and then you'd set the remote, right? Just a few steps, but it works centrally. Like you'd SCP and then you'd set the remote, right? Just a few steps, and you have to remember a bunch of shit and write a bunch of shit. And so, but also when you add it, it's unique to you get given a string, right? Whatever it might be, just a random string default password. So if you create that remote, your account. Your account will default to whatever account you're using inside the shell, right? So if you're logged in as you or admin or root or whatever, it'll be root at whatever, and it'll create you an account and set your password, right? You can change all that via the CLI or via the UI, but if you create two repos, you can put them back in sync, but you have to juggle two passwords, and then the workflow would be SSH onto the remote, change the password on that. I think you can directly change the password on a remote from your local, I think. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's very cumbersome. So if you just SCP up your current repo, it's just that repo, and you set the remote to be the same thing, it just starts working. The password's the same. Just think about it. So that's like the common workflow for it. So it's really simple. All you do, grab the current user, we grab the current remote URL if it's not there, we check to make sure it's empty, and then also, unless it's off, because you can set it to off and turn off the remote or add multiple remotes, and then we've got a couple of questions. So we'll say, is this your username, the one you want to use? This is not clear at the minute because there's the SSH, so you can give it an upload method, SSH, HTTP or HTTPS, defaults to SSH. So you can say, give me an SSH user to create this connection to the SCP for you, and then it will find its own directory to sit in, right? So you give it a common central locate, which is also like a conventional thing, having one folder. We store those repos. You don't have to. You can put them anywhere, but this is defaults right now to them being all in the same place. Again, it's a very rough tool. And then, it will ask you what your SCP password is, or sorry, your SSH password username is, to SSH up the thing, and then it will say, by default right now, it uses the same password for the, you give it like the URL, right, of what it should be. Or like the containing URL for like the root of wherever all of your repos are stored remotely, right? And it assumes the same user. There's no handling yet to change the user, but there should be. And and then basically once it's done that, it'll go, there's two methods here, SCP remote and set remote URL. Pretty straightforward. And almost all of this is so simple, it just runs a bunch of shell scripts, right? So this is the Crystal 4. This is really good actually. This process class is awesome. It's way better than the one in Ruby. It's originally a Ruby script, and I ported it over to Crystal. I wanted the performance, I wanted to ship it as a single binary and not have any, remove the number of dependencies, right? It's much quicker, it can do much more work. Crystal's crazy fast. So I want to ship a single binary, and also it's quite useful, especially when I'm transacting lots of random shitty data around. Having type safety is really cool, right? Or static types is useful as well, right? Although you can't see it because that's Crystal's magic trick. It has type inference. So you get your compiler error, but you don't have to deal with writing the types out. And 9 times out of 10, it just chooses the right thing. It's almost magic. It's really cool. But you can set types as well. I try and avoid it though because it just means you stick to one paradigm. I'm doing it a few times, but you don't have to do it all the time. Right? The type inference is good. But yeah, you get by default, you get the output. So standard IO just you just pipe them to a bunch of other stuff. So output error is great. It's really, really good. In fact, I kind of love this. This is fantastic because there's a really common gem. There's a whole family of gems in Ruby called the TTY gems, and another one called Thor. They're all really good, but this is just, again, like the Crystal like standard library has responded to Ruby and said, well, we can do some of these things better. And this is one of those examples of like Ruby doesn't do this out of the box. Well, it does, but not as well, right? Handling all the errors and all that sort of stuff, and then like piping things around. It's really, really quite nice actually. So yeah, and then set remote URL, pretty bog standard. We've just construct a string, and we say, do you want to do it? And it goes, yeah, all right, bro, and it sets it. So there's that one. What's we got? And the list of, again, it's really simple shit. Just, I love writing simple code. This is why I prefer doing stuff like this to web stuff, because it's organic. You can just sort of like, and then we just do extra, and it hasn't done anything. It just leaves you alone. It's just shit. So some of the commands in pretty cool. Create tickets, create wiki. And I think you can create wikis. You can create tickets. You can do all sorts of shit. It's really cool. But FSL add does something. So the idea is, I'll incrementally just make it just nicer, and also I don't have to. They don't really accept PRs, and it's not. Are all Git, right? They're all in GitHub. I use GitHub for everything up until recently because they've been so shit. So yeah, a lot of these things just get no feedback whatsoever. So the idea is that in those situations, whatever, if you do revert just blank should be, because I'm thinking about making it like revert with a new argument, right? So the argument would be revert interactive or revert -i, right? So you can do irevert or revert -i or revert -interactive, and it will just go into that interactive revert mode. We can pick the files you want to revert. It's really minor. And then branch. So yeah, so I forget the names of branches, so I want to do more of this. So if you just do fossil branch, there's two on this at the minute. So whatever, there's guy and trunk, right? So if I want to change branch, it's fossil update trunk. Ooh, trunk. Oh shit! And then whatever, the sync failed. The point is, this is a play repo. It doesn't matter. So yeah, so let me just do FSL branch guy and trunk, right? So FSL makes that also interactive. Oh, I didn't continue. Anyway, point is, FSL branch will make that interactive. If you just do branch, it will just say where you're at. That's less useful than changing, because you'll either know or just pressing escape. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever. And there's also FSL CB, which then does the same thing, which says current branch, right? So you can do fossil branch current, and that's just a shorthand for that, right? So pretty straightforward. And then yeah, I've changed it. I might not keep this on switch. That's a bit shit, but whatever. This was nice having a little case statements are very nice in the Ruby likes. They're very easy and very terse. People might like the syntax there. I don't know where I get it, but whatever. Diff is an interesting one. Cat, if bat's not available. I'll do the same for, well, I can't think of anyone who uses a terminal who won't have FCF, and most of them will also have bat, right? And I can't think of anyone who uses a terminal who won't have FCF, and most of them will also have bat, right? Some people prefer like FD or ripgrep or whatever, but FCF's awesome. Yeah, fuck it. That'll be two dependencies. Again, I was saying, I want to ship a binary, but fuck, like whatever, it's fine. Anyway, that's all that diff does. It's pretty straightforward. Ignore is actually the beefiest one here. It does a couple of things. So if we go to ignore, I'll go with that, and then yeah, so ignore does way more stuff. Can't be asked to explain all of it, but basically it's pretty straightforward. It's not only, so there's one argument for this called reimport, right? And basically if you've, so another thing which is like, again, this is one of the sort of weirdly again, how I present this might change, but this is a really good one that I really like. It's probably my favorite is ignore, because not only does it work, so there's a thing, so some things in Fossil are more annoying than they probably should be, right? So a big one I want to do is like hijack fossil. I'll give it a new name, but hijack fossil init, because the defaults that come in the box of fossil, you can set them globally, but they're not the best. So I want to be able to have, we have a config file already. Set your defaults in there instead, and then just say init, and it'll go through a wizard and say, do you want to follow your defaults? Give you some choices, blah blah blah. Like a wizard to set up. It's like an NPX type situation, right? Like say you're doing, sort of the wizard you get when you do like Astro or like V or whatever. Like, what are you doing? Blah blah blah, and then just scaffold a nice thing. Maybe even set your password there, and then rather than having to worry about. Do I want to do that? I'd have to ask a grown up about that, because I have to do the password first, store it, because I'm just leaning on DB actually. I need to think about it, because security is not my strong point, but only storing passwords. I can store it in memory temporarily, but I need to make sure it's. I'll ask someone smarter than me to when I get to that. But anyway, so yeah, there's a thing. So there is. If I go into this, go into this even. Sorry, space F. We have got, it's called ignore glob, right? So there's this whole fossil settings thing. So there's, if you go to, let's do FSL UI, okay, and then we come into here, go to admin, and then we go to settings. There's a whole bunch of settings here. You have to go to all to see all of them. But yeah, there's all these settings here. There's tons, right? Not all these explained particularly well, but yeah, there's a ton, right? And everything with a V behind it, as it says here, can be versionable, which means you can store multiple things like a git ignore style thing in your repo. But to find that out, you have to kind of come here, right, to know, to be told. So you have to know to come to admin. You're brand new to this thing. You have to know that this is an admin. You've got configuration, but no, it's under settings, right? Web interface with photo settings command, whatever. And then you have to come to this little shit button here that says all. And then set some defaults, right? You can set these, again, you can set these globally once they're set, but when it comes to the ones that are versionable, you can't just have these appear, right? So whenever so either you're converting or you're downloading something, you want to continue with fossil, what do, right? So the glob format is identical to gits, right? It works the same way. So all we do is we can, so it's got two modes, right? Either interactively. So first it says if there's no fossil init thing, it sets it. So it creates the fossil ignore glob file for you, so you can store whatever you've got in there. Then it says, okay, is there a git ignore in here? We found one. Do you want to import those into here? You can just say yes. It will copy those over, and then once that's done, or if you don't have the git ignore, it will then say that same interactive FCF picker to say, here, what files you want to add to your ignore, right? It's kind of slick. It's kind of cool. I like it. It's the most complete one I've done. Took the longest because it's easy stuff, but it's like you have to think about, because it's like procedural. I'm not making a big overly complex system. It's just a CLI tool. I'm not going nuts with it with loads of boilerplate, and keeping it procedural and straight to the point as long as possible. It's fine, right? I don't see any upcoming maintenance bomb with this really. And if there is, it's not doing much, and it's opt in. So ignore's pretty cool. Another one here is another default setting that isn't on by default, which I think personally should be, is MVRM files, right? And it says here, the MV and rename commands will also move the associated files with the checkout, and the RM delete commands will also remove the associated files from within the checkout. So there is two things here. So there's two commands. So unlike git, and I disagree with this at first, I was going to write my way around it. I think I was going to do something stupid, but that doesn't always work, right? Because when the mechanic by which you have to do that is effectively a hash of what's in the file, right? And fossil hashes are better than git hashes because it's newer. It uses file, right? It's modifications, and I think it's fairly good. But there's scenarios where I can't recall that. Maybe I have at some point, because it seems like one of those really subtle bugs where Git doesn't actually know that a file has changed, or Git doesn't actually know that it's been deleted or whatever. I think it's quite rare. Either way, it's possible. So they've hedged their bets, and they've introduced this idea of MV and rename, right? So the idea would be, this doesn't do, but by default, this doesn't do anything, right? So if I just move a file around, it will just say the file's missing. It knows the file, and it knows the file's moved, and it's got everything there to understand, because this exists, right? So it can do the best guess, but it chooses not to, which is more long-winded, but also it's not really the end of the world. And if you treat your time of managing the CLI as a budget, the amount of missed opportunities to have needless mergers is probably the biggest thing, the biggest gain from Fossil day to day, I think. Where like where everything syncs automatically, you don't have as many opportunities to get things fall out of sync, just because you're pushing more frequently, because the entire thing is you just commit and carry on. You don't curate history. Plus history curation, rebasing stuff, making like cherry picking and making, that is less of a thing in Fossil world. You just commit and move on. More often at least. So it's like that time versus the time spent from occasionally remove some files or delete some files, having to write a command in. I think actually you're probably still saving time in the long run. That's not fact. That's opinion. I've got no idea if that's true in reality. It feels like it is. It feels intuitive. Again, it's quite hard to say definitively, but I would assume. I'm not a scientist, but what this command does is it makes them do a thing, right? So MV and rename will move files and rename files, but RM. So RM and delete. So there is also a delete command. I've hijacked delete. Remove the associated files from within the checkout, right? So it doesn't delete the files; it removes them from a checkout as a commit, right? Or check in. Point is the payload, right? It won't add. It will unadd them effectively, but where move files will move and rename will rename, delete will not delete, which is correct, I guess. But because I'm a maniac, I've hijacked it, and let's go back to this. Where are we? FSL. Yeah. So let's go to delete. There we go. So yeah, I've hijacked that. Because why not? So now it warns you. It will tell you shouldn't do it. But yeah, it will first do. So Fossil exec is a little shorthand thing for running Fossil commands. Again, it's just a shorter way of doing it. And then I do process run, which is like a drive-by run of a command. So then yeah, I remove it from Fossil, and then I remove it, which is fun. So yeah, and I've got this little method called potentially destructive, which is just like saying, it'll abort if you say no to the question, right, and you pass in the question. So it doesn't do much. Anyway, so yeah, so that then physically deletes files, which is nice. Yeah. Also, again, that's also interactive, right? So we've got this FCF select. Oh Christ! This FCF select thing. If I go to CD stuff and then FSL delete, and then we've got. Let's just get rid of farts.sharts. We don't want that. Get rid of that. There we go. It's deleted, and then it's actually deleted is quote unquote deleted. Deleted file is actually deleted, and I also be like, it's gone, bro. LS and farts.sharts has gone forever. Oh no. And yeah, so a lot of things I've undo. You can't undo this. It is very much FSL undo is very much destructive, right? Which is fine, because then also if I were to do, let's go to sharts.text. If I do FSL rm sharts.text and then do ls. Oh, actually, what? Hang on. Fossil remove thing. That's not correct. Oh, I thought. Huh. I'm confused, Ed. I thought it wouldn't delete files.